Welcome to my Bob Thurman podcast. I'm so grateful some good friends enabled me to present them to you. If you enjoy them and find them useful, please think of becoming a member of Tibet House US to help preserve Tibetan culture. Tibet House is the Dalai Lama's cultural center in America. All best wishes. Have a great day.
This is episode 329, the first turning of the wheel of Dharma.
Greetings. How are you all today? Today is the Drukpe Tse Shi in Tibetan, which means the fourth date of the sixth, literally, but it's fourth day of the sixth month, lunar month. And that is the day in the Tibetan calendar when they celebrate the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, which the Buddha did when he came to Sarnath, outside of Varanasi. I don't know if it was called Sarnath at that time. Maybe it was called Rishipatana, which means the place where all the sages fell. But that was referred to some incident before him. They didn't come falling, raining down on him. He was one of the rishis himself. But anyway, that's what it's called, Rishipatana. In the deer grove, Murgavana, the deer grove, grove of deer, and you can still go there and see the stupa that is built on that site. And so in the Tibetan calendar, I don't think it's in any other Buddhist country on that particular day. I don't know for sure, actually. Sorry about my hair. It's a little unruly today. So it's a wonderful day. And what does it mean to turn the wheel of the Dharma? So like in a way, that's a wheel behind me, the mandala of the Kala Chakra, the wheel of time. But a mandala itself is within a wheel, in a way, a circle, a sphere. And the wheel of royalty in ancient India was the chariot wheel of a king. So it became a symbol of the power, of military power of a king. And in the kind of military-based culture of that time, of the Vedist culture, coming from the conquest, gradual conquest, and the domination of the Harappan civilization by the Indo-Aryan people, as they were called, the sort of lighter-skinned whiteys, aggressive whiteys, coming from the Central Asia. They were nomads. So that's what made them tougher, was that they were nomads. Nomads always tend to be tougher than sedentary people because they have a harder life and they have to herd animals and they have to push them around and occasionally slaughter them because the animals harvest the protein from the grasses, which the human stomach cannot absorb properly. And then in the form of meat, they eat it. But they're very careful with their animals. They're not horrible like modern feedlots, treating them like nothing. They are, because they know that their animals are their life source. The Tibetan with their yaks, the Vedic Indo-Aryan people with their cattle and their herds. And but in India, which was a very rich agricultural place, they didn't really nomadize that much. And although the Indians were not so paranoid about nomads like the Chinese were, that they built a huge wall to keep the nomads away, they didn't do that. And they were like local small herds. But they also didn't, it wasn't economically viable to eat meat they didn't need animals to harvest grass because they could grow crops. And it was incredibly wealthy, the Indian subcontinent, its agricultural land, because the rivers coming from Himalayas are so rich in a mineral that they replenish the harvesting area very beautifully every year. And so for that reason, it was not necessary to have to have animals in between you and the solar energy in plants. Okay, I'm not excusing, and the Buddhists certainly, and the Jains even more than the Buddhists, were very intense about the life of plants and were not into life of animals, and didn't want to kill animals for food. And they did it as a whole. They did it even without theory of veganism. They did milk cows. They used milk products, cheese and milk, and the cow was like holy, therefore considered holy for milking. And they plowed, but they didn't just plain herd animals to graze so much. They let them graze to live, but they didn't rely on meat. So therefore, by the 3rd century of the Common Era, the Emperor Ashoka, under the inspiration of Jainism and Buddhism, was publishing pamphlets in India saying, better not eat meat, and we're trying not to eat it in the palace. It's unkind to kill animals, and better not. So, although that was not the case with the Vedic documents, they weren't caring about that, and they did sacrifice in their rituals. But in the post-enlightenment revolution, mid-first millennium axial age India, they generally automatically went toward vegetarianism, which they still maintain to a great extent today. Wonderfully for the planet, I think, and for their own environment. So so the turning of the wheel and taking the symbol of the wheel for an enlightened being is a way it's making a statement that the spiritual, the scientific knowing of reality, the knower of reality, the realistic person who is truly realistic because of knowing truly what is reality, what is the meaning of human life, what is the purpose of human life, what is the privilege of being a human if you have become one, and what is the opportunity as a human of learning to become a superhuman, which is an enlightened being, a high bodhisattva or Buddha. What is the opportunity? What that's going to be like for you and for those who in your circle of connection. It will be wonderful, actually, is the discovery of Buddhist science. Reality itself is wonderful. Reality conjures up planets like this where living beings can enjoy life and be kind to each other and be loving. And reality is that, in a way, it is that love, which means it is that abundance of energy. It's such an abundance of inexhaustible energy, reality, that it can sustain life indefinitely. And a being who understands the whole process of life, which includes death and rebirth and renewing, it includes the knowledge of change and death and rebirth and renewing, and that life is bigger than any particular form of life. Even each individual's life can become infinite. It is already connected to the infinite in a sense, in a real sense. And it can become consciously so. And once consciously so, it is aligned with love in the form of an infinite energy that can therefore give whatever is needed to infinite beings. That's the nature of reality. That's what Buddha discovered as the nature of reality. He did not discover a safety zone that you can escape to and leave the arena of life. That's a misunderstanding of the Buddha's discovery. Actually, he allowed that misunderstanding, of course, even in his own school, by teaching a dualistic version that there's nirvana elsewhere from samsara, which is still alive today, and many Buddhists still embrace that. Because some beings, it's too much for them and can lead to misunderstanding to be told, or to try to imagine, or it goes beyond their imagination ability, to think of themselves in the difficulties and adversities and vicissitudes of living, which includes dying, includes being sick, includes banging into things and having them bang into you, and people and having them bother you, includes all those things. But how could that be a zone of infinite love? How on earth could that be possible? And so that's beyond their imagination. And if they wrongly interpreted such an assurance, they might decide that they can be nasty or do anything they want because it won't matter because it's all love. If they destroy you, that's love. Though they torture you, that's love. And they can come up with crazy ideas because human beings are very clever. So what is the turning of the wheel of Dharma? So the wheel of Dharma, therefore, rules life. It is that which brings beings to deeper awareness of life, of what their life really is, and thereby enables them to enjoy it in a deepest sense, to the fullest. And once they do, or even as they advance toward that, they automatically become a source of enjoyment, a source of goodness, a source of love to others. And therefore, they create like a node of ever expanding happiness around themselves, which the human being has the opportunity to do better than other animals, actually. The other animals cannot really embrace you mostly, except within their own little family. And how big and they can, and their family can't ever be that big because of their lack of imagination, actually, you could say. They don't have the brain yet to have developed such an imagination. How come we have it? Because of our past life generosity, ethicality, tolerance, creativity, ability to concentrate, and ability to open ourselves to be more aware of a larger reality and be free and to enjoy freedom. So the turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, as the Arya Satya, as they are called. The word Arya had come from the racial self-identification of the dominant people in India at that time, who had come from nomadic Central Asia. About over several thousand years, they migrated gradually, and some of them who were smart prevailed upon the beings who were doing agriculture in the river valleys down toward the bottom of Eurasia, like the Persians, the people at the Tigris Euphrates, what are now the Iranians and the Iraqis now, but then they were different, other people, and Egypt and India was the big prize. They went toward the Yellow River in China also. Even Yangtze was too jungly probably for them, for their chariots, but they could go down the Yellow River. And India was the Indus, Ganges, but especially the Indus Valley first. That was their big alluvium where a lot of people could be supported, a lot of agriculture could happen. So the Arya was a racial term originally, but by the time of Buddha, since they'd been there for several thousand years by then, it became a class term, meaning the noble class, the higher class, the twice-born class, you could say, the Aryas. And it was no longer a racial term there. And so when Buddha said that this is the Arya Satya, he took the word, just like he took the wheel, which was a symbol of royal authority based on violence, the wheel of the chariot. He took that wheel, or the discus wheel, which was a weapon, like a frisbee with a sharp edge on it, wheel weapon, which you flung at your enemy to cut their head off, like a discus, so that's a wheel weapon. And the chariot wheel was the big wheel that enabled them to overwhelm the sedentary people, and like a tank, and they had horses. They lived with them. And so just like that is the case, so he took the word Arya, which meant a higher class person, noble, with all its associations of something positive in a social caste system, just in a worldly way. And he associated with the higher consciousness person. Arya meaning there, through various etymologies and so on, one who has no enemy. And therefore, one has realized that the other and the self are not rigidly separated, and has had the first level of enlightenment where you realize you fully empathize with others. And therefore, you become automatically friendly to them and more loving to them. And that he called that Arya. So he shifted what was noble was not by where you were born, what caste you were born in, but what made you noble was your openness toward others and your sensitivity of how they feel, and therefore your reluctance and restraining of yourself and harming them or bothering them, and instead being good to them and kind to them and loving to them. Okay? Because it's a process of developing an openness of consciousness, an emptiness, let's say, and an openness and a freedom of consciousness, right? The famous shunyata, what he sometimes called selflessness of the self. Selflessness of the self is an openness of the self, an awareness of its changeability, of its relativity, and being freeing oneself of the rigidity of feeling that one had an absolute self. And therefore, it was a problem about how do you relate to anybody else or anything else. So the cure to that is the realization of the selfless self, the cure to the absolute self, to the intrinsic self. Okay? So that was the wheel of, and that leads you to be loving and compassionate. Empathy does, right? And openness. So that was his 4 Arya Satyas, noble truths. And so we have called them, but when we think of them as noble, I'm coming to now my own book because I feel sad about my book because it was published during COVID. I never did a book tour, and not many people have read it, in my opinion. Not enough people. And that is this book. This is the Wisdom is Bliss book. Is it showing left, right, reversed, backwards? That's it. And there I renamed the 4 Noble Truths. Of course, I'm not changing it. There's nothing wrong with the 4 Noble Truths. It's correct translation. But I'm renaming it for our times because we think of noble people in a class sense as snobs, as some sort of hoity-toity people, what the Germans call hochnäsig, high-nosed people. Nose in the air. We English have an expression. Their nose up in the air. And so that doesn't really have that much of a positive connotation. It's still a little bit, but not enough. And what we like are friendly people, or pleasant people, nice people, right? So these are the 4 friendly. I call them friendly. And then truth. The Western translators of Buddhism, who were insisting it was just a religion for some backward people, they needed truth in religion because religion is just a belief, they thought. And because that's what when you believe something that isn't strictly rational, you can only believe it because you can't verify that belief. Like an absolute God created the universe rather than a relative one is working on it along with all the other relative beings who live in it. We're all working together on it, which is more reasonable. Relative gods are reasonable, but not absolute ones. So, point is, belief is not the main thing. So, what do we have a thing that we can believe in, but is not so sort of highfalutin? Facts, and these are 4 facts. So they're 4 friendly facts. And even when we know these facts and when we recognize them, we will be happy. So I even call them fun facts. So I call them the 4 fun facts, the 4 friendly fun facts and I think that's what people should understand about Buddhism. I really do. I think people should understand that people should have fun. that life should be fun. They should never vote for somebody who doesn't seem like fun. I saw somebody yesterday at a hearing in Congress who was pretending to run for office, who's like tortured, obviously. It looks like this. It looks so unhappy. Just like the other guy who used to pretend to be, he had a lot of cosmeticians, he was an actor, right, in business show, the other guy. But now he looks very angry all the time. So people should take the clue. Don't vote for anybody who's angry and who looks unhappy and is miserable, has a glowering, scowling expression. Because that's the way they're going to behave. And don't give them power over you. Don't give your precious royal jewel in Thomas Paine's wonderful symbol. Don't give your precious fragment, shard of the royal crown to anybody who looks mad, who's mad at you, or mad at everybody else, because they'll treat you badly. So don't do it. Please use your common sense. Don't let them fool you with slogans and fake news. Please. They should be semi-cheery. They can be serious, but in a way where they have a happy tone about it. They have a sense of humor. That's the kind of people, only with someone with a sense of humor. Okay, I'm sorry, that's a digression. But that is Dharma teaching, on the other hand. Okay, that is. Politics, the realm of politics and the realm of Dharma and spirituality are one realm. And we need spirituality in our teachers, not fake ideological conformity and fanaticism and persecution of people of other beliefs. No, an open-minded, but a sense of living for something greater. And especially a leader who is going to take responsibility for you should be loving toward you, should want you to do well and want you to thrive and want to help you. Otherwise, then they are not leading you. Then they won't be helpful, right? Okay, so back to now. I did an earlier podcast on the preface of the book, and for chapter 1 is the Buddha path. Then this book and the Dharma is about getting real. Very good, Bob. I forget what I write, so when I reread it, I talk to myself. While having fun along the way. Get real while having fun along the way. That's key. Maybe you're surprised to hear that things like Buddhas, enlightened persons, enlightenment, spirituality, or wisdom have anything to do with reality. That's already a shock because you think it's some spiritual thing, but actually it's a scientific thing. Enlightened means you know what is real, what the facts are about life and death, which is part of life. It's just like sleep is part of your day. It's not the opposite of being your waking time. Your waking time, your sleeping time, your dreaming time, they're all part of your day. So your life, your death, and your between life state is all part of life. Okay? You live in all of those conditions. And you're going to live forever, by the way. That should cheer you up at first. You're going to live forever. Ray Kurzweil, relax. You don't need to download yourself into a robot. If there's really great robots to be downloaded in, you can. But instead, you're going to download yourself through the between state into another nice, brilliant human body, maybe female, maybe having more fun next life. Not such a like anxious male. Maybe, or maybe another male, maybe human. Hopefully not like a miserable crocodile or an elephant or something. Or a deer being eaten by lions, or a lion looking for a deer to eat. No, you're going to be human again, and you can maybe get a job with Google. And if you do a really smart way, you can create a way of inheriting your options, your stock options that you have as a chief engineer. Okay? And you don't need that robot. But making great robots is also helpful, because then it could give more people freedom from labor and just meaningless kind of just doing moving some wrench, tightening a bolt somewhere, and then they can become enlightened and highly educated, highly aware, highly sensitive, highly loving, highly empathetic, highly kind, and they can spend their time doing that, learning that. Okay. So first of all these things have anything to do with reality. That's a shock. I'm acknowledging people might be and also you might think reality, because governments and spiritualities, so the religious systems, have been trying to tell you that reality is scary and horrible, and therefore that you need them to save you. That's what they've been brainwashing, terrorizing all of us for thousands of years. That it's really scary, reality is, and we need them. You might think reality is dreadful, joy is all too rare, and fun is childish, while the spiritual life is supposed to be terribly serious. That is not a bad paragraph, Bob. Now, let me start right off. Since my life has had a lot to do with Buddhism, I have had this in this life and previous lives also, I think. That's why I gravitated toward it in this life. And I'm sure many of you also know about enlightenment. It doesn't have to be, actually, I'm sorry I used the word Buddhism, but I put it in quotes, scare quotes, because then people automatically think it's a religion. And it's not the religious part that helped me, actually. Although I have fun with it nowadays, but it's not what helped me. What helped me was the scientific part of it, kind of, because I was wanting to know reality. And you do too. You really do. And you should in all part, you do. When you get to a street crossing, you're happy that you know what a red light means and a green light means and a yellow light means. That's very lucky for you. And you want to know that. You don't want to just believe maybe green light means stop and red light means go because that's what somebody told me. No, you don't want to do that. You want to know for sure green, red, yellow, what they mean. Okay? Because then you can get across the street safely. So in your spiritual life, you should also know what is real, what is life and death, what is God, who is God, how many gods are there, what is a human, what are you? Not only who, but what are you? What is a human? So let me start right off. Since my life has had a lot to do with Buddhism, which seems highly religious, because I put it in quotes, by saying that what I am going to share with you is not the religion of Buddhism, quote, Buddhism, unquote, but the experience of, quote, Buddhism, unquote. I'm sorry. The full release into joy that happens when we come face to face with the real reality. That's the real reality of what life really is. It's bliss. And wisdom is knowing it, and therefore the title, Wisdom is Bliss. Okay? That's really good. They say that to understand a book or a theory, if you can understand, you have to understand any one word, one sentence, and then you understand all of it. And conversely, to understand all of it, you have to understand each word, each sentence. So the really good one is it's pregnant with the full meaning in every word. Should be like that. There's no throwaway. Should not be any throwaway in a book. There's not getting to the main point. Buddhism. The full release into joy that happens when we come face to face with the real reality. Our goal here is not to, quote, believe in Buddhism, unquote. Not to, quote, be religious, unquote. Not to join a cult or subscribe to a theory. Our goal is to gain the clarity of mindful awareness and the joy of real freedom. Freedom that is realistic. Freedom based on the realization that reality is free. It's not charging you for the energy it gives you. it's charging you up with the energy, but it's not asking you to pay. It's just giving it. And if you know what it is more and you're more open to it, it's ready to give inexhaustibly. No matter what our religion, belief system, or cultural membership. So here, the joy of real freedom you can find in any religion, any belief system, or cultural membership. In other words, if once you know it, you see it everywhere. You find it everywhere. That's a wonderful thing. So in the Dalai Lama's famous words, you keep your culture, you keep your grandmother's religion, as long as your grandma wants you to. And you make them happy that way. And then you infuse that with if you understand something new. Okay? Or your grandmother's secularism, if that's what makes her happy. And you infuse that with something spiritual. You find the spiritual side of that. Humanism is the spiritual side of secularism, of materialism, humanism, right? And yes, I call that deep experience of the face-to-face with true reality a Buddhism. Somehow, because it's an opening. It's not a grabbing on something. It's not a locking yourself in any kind of place. It's an opening. That's the only way you can know reality. Real reality is to be wide open to everything. Infinitely open, actually. Amazingly. Don't freak out. You are infinite, right? Because infinity permeates you, your finiteness. So that duality of finite, infinite is not absolute. It's just a relation, expressed relationally by our relational concepts. Even our concept for the non-relational is a relational concept, right? You know that. And yes, I purposefully associate it with an orgasm. I'm right up front. The blissful transport that every animal approaches with fear and trembling, yet craves as a peak experience of life. Isn't that so? Here I align myself with the great Wilhelm Reich, who wrote a brilliant book, The Function of the Orgasm, that is really hard to find. Although he was a disciple of Freud, he was a major psychologist, but he was radical for our uptight Euro-American societies and even Asian ones. He was. Of course, everyone makes a fuss about finding happiness or joy, but few make a virtue out of fun. Enlightenment, quote unquote, smacks of 17th and 18th century intellectuals like Descartes and Voltaire, and the serious business of facing the universe, dismembering nature with scientific analysis. To be clear, what I mean with this term enlightenment includes that as well. But more importantly, it is the blissful fun of life with wisdom and love. It is an extraordinary state of awareness, which we will all definitely get to amazingly soon. So that's all. That's all I can do in a short podcast, is like less than 2 pages to riff off of. That's my little extra nudge to the Wheel of Dharma on Wheel of Dharma Day. For more nudges on Wheel of Dharma Day, please look up DalaiLama.com and see His Holiness enjoying being in Ladakh and giving some teachings, friendly teachings, to a huge crowd of Ladakhis and other people who've come from everywhere. Unfortunately, Tibetans who want to pour over the border between Chinese-occupied Tibet and India-occupied Tibet are probably blocked from doing so by the Chinese. But there's still a lot of Tibetans in Ladakh and Spiti and around the world, and then Westerners and lots of people will be there at that high altitude in the summer, luckily out of the floods and the heat, and watch him enjoy that. That's one thing. And another thing, to go to thus.org, at thus.org, which is the website of Tibet House, and also go to menla.org, sometimes thusmenla.org, but menla.org, which is thus means Tibet House US. So menla.org, and see all the programs that are there. And especially anybody who's doing high Vajrayana meditation, don't miss Lelo Rinpoche giving some teachings at Menla with me and Michelle Lowe, and doing some yoga teaching in between. And enjoy. Come see us. And there are many other things that happen there. And at Thus in the City, Thus City Center, Tibet House City Center, and many other retreat places and centers and yoga centers all over the US and the world. And do go somewhere to some of them and turn the wheel of Dharma yourself, which means show that the spiritual effort to discover reality, enjoy reality, know what it is, experience it, open yourself to it, is really how to cheer yourself up, how to help the world, how to clear your mind and feel better and be better with everybody else, and therefore make things fine. Look at that wonderful picture. That is a picture of the future Buddha Maitreya. You see his face? Isn't he sweet? I really like him. That's the one that's in the Dalai Lama's residence in Lhasa, which was hidden behind big sheaves of grain and therefore was not destroyed completely when the Chinese communists were destroying everything during the 60s and 70s. And therefore then was cleaned out, and it was a little bit, refurbished. And you can still see it there in Tibet. And we want His Holiness to be able to go and see it. It's a sort of positive symbol because it's the Buddha who will come in the future when things are ready for a Buddha, and when people wouldn't dissect him like the E.T. or something because he had weird powers. Okay, so that's it. Om Mani Padme Hum. That's when you recite a mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, which means jewel and lotus in union, which is wisdom and compassion and wisdom in union, which is the sort of savior mantra of the Avalokita Ishvara, or Lokeshvara, the wonderful incarnation of compassion. That many of them, actually, female and male, all over the world, who are there to help us. A lot of help around, okay? Visible and invisible, angels and people, okay? So happy 4th of the 6th lunar month. I can't say 4th of July. It's also the 4th. 4th of the 6th. Happy 4th of the 6th. And please enjoy things and turn your wheel of Dharma. That is your reality wheel, your teaching wheel, your learning wheel. Okay? All the best. Dedicate the merit to quickly, all of us, becoming really real and really happy, and being therefore capable of helping others become really real and really happy, and not unhappy like people at war and terrible. There's no point on that. Everybody now knows it's all over the planet. It's on the internet. Happiness is everywhere. You don't have to get rid of somebody else for you to be happy. It's a completely terrible mistake. Let's not let it happen now. Let's have the century of happiness that our dear teacher, our lovely Guru, His Holiness Dalai Lama, promised us all humans, if they will just take a break and deal with reality. Okay, bye. Thank you. Thank you, Justin, my engineer, my wonderful, faithful, loyal, clever Justin Stone Diaz. Thank you.
The Bob Thurman podcast is produced through a Creative Commons No Derivatives license. Please be sure to like, share, and repost on your favorite social media platforms. And is brought to you in part through the generous support of the Tibet House US Menla membership community and listeners like you. To learn more about the benefits of Tibet House membership, please visit our websites at thus.org, menla.org, and bobthurman.com. Tashi Delek, and thanks for tuning in.